Welcome to Trust the Journey. I'm Jason Moledzki.
And I'm Melanie Curtis.
Our mission is to live, laugh, love, and learn together with you.
We're here to create conscious connections, to grow and contribute through our practice of openness, honesty, vulnerability, humility, and trust, trusting the entire journey.
If you would like to find us all over the internet, because we're everywhere, you can go to trustthejourney.today, which is our website, and that will also be our same handle on many of our feeds, on our Instagram, on our Facebook. You can find us trustthejourney.today. If you go to our website, you'll get pinged to sign up for our newsletter, and that will keep you in touch with everything that Trust the Journey is doing, keep you informed whenever new episodes come out. So please sign up for the newsletter. And if you scroll down to the bottom of the page, you're going to find a button down there that says Donate Now that will link you to our Patreon account. And that Patreon account is just vital to keeping this show alive and functioning. And we really do appreciate so much the people who are supporting us on Patreon, because your contributions go directly to the financial needs of this program and make it happen. So a huge thank you to all of our Patreon supporters. We really, truly appreciate you. And there's an added bonus that comes along with being a member of the Patreon supporting team, is you get included in the Flight One family. And that is a private Facebook group that we curate. Did I say that? I did.
Which is kind of true, you know? Yeah.
I did say that. Yeah. It's the Trust the Journey family.
We're all a family.
I'm going back and forth between my different duties, which is the Trust the Journey family, which is a private Facebook group that we curate on Facebook. And it is a safe, emotional space for everybody to share into in any form you wish, and to be supportive of each other and to care for each other. So a lot of us see the internet or Facebook or these social media streams as potentially volatile or risky places that aren't necessarily safe to be in. And our intention here is to create and hold a safe space where we can communicate socially and interact with other people of like mind. So we encourage you to become a Patreon supporter and to become a part of the Trust the Journey family.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. And how does one trust that type of space? You know, we're facilitating, we're holding that space. So we're if you're listening to the show and you trust us, that is basically transferred into the Trust the Journey family. So we're always moderating and caring for that space as well. So we really do invite you, and thank you to our most recent Patreon supporters who just joined us. You guys, seriously, the best. We also want to thank Kimberly Joy Voice. She does all of our editing for the video on YouTube, for the audio on all the podcast channels. The best. If you want her, KimberlyJoyVoice@gmail.com. #highly recommend. If you want to find more from us individually, so Jay and me, you can follow Jay at Jason_Moledzki on Instagram. And for me, you can go to MelanieCurtis.com. So right on, family, let's dive into this. Today, we're talking about priorities and growth opportunities. Jay, you posed this topic, so I would love to hear what inspired you to pose it.
I'll be straightforward, right to the point. What inspired me is dawning into the realm of consciousness on a daily basis. The simple, and now when I say simple, it's kind of an oxymoron, because it's so complicated we have no idea how it's even occurring, right? But the act of awaking in the morning, where I am entering this realm of life, being alive, being conscious, and here I am, I'm entering the day, and I'm thinking to myself, okay, what are my very first thoughts? What are my very first feelings? My very first considerations about how I'm going to prioritize this life that I have, this day, which may be the only day that I have in my life. Probably not going to be, but at some point it will be the only day. So there's this thing that we've learned from being skydivers our whole lives, is that sometimes today is your last day, right? And it's the whole perspective we gain from having a real world relationship to the finality of our mortality. And so this priorities and growth opportunity topic is based in this idea of me entering the day, not necessarily by my own will. I'm just here. Poof. I've arrived. I'm awake. Here I am in my body. What am I going to do first? And what is the top of my priority list today? So this is the question that I'm posing to myself and to our listenership and Mel let's talk about how and why we choose the things that we choose to prioritize, and where is the relationship between the growth opportunities, the things that we want in our lives, and we say to ourselves, oh, I'd really like to do that one day, or I'd love to have this, or I dream of, right? All these ideas of how do we manifest some future for ourselves. This is the relationship to it, is how do we prioritize what we do with our time in order for those growth opportunities to come to fruition?
That's a great question. I think it is it's difficult to look at that question without acknowledging autopilot and the knowledge that we need to interrupt autopilot in order to theoretically grow away, like forward out of our blind spots and all of that stuff. So, but I also think there's something to be said for habits and those growing over time. Man, when you pose this topic, I'm laughing because you bring this amazingly reflective perspective to the question. And I thought to myself, well, how is this showing up in my life right now? I'm going a bit to the micro on purpose to share some stories around that. And it's funny because I think about my work and how right now I have, again, I've said this, but so many awesome things going on in my work. It's such a good place to be. I love it. I have no complaints whatsoever. I bring that up because I'm essentially prioritizing my book launch, prioritizing working on promoting How to Fly and getting that to more people because I believe deeply in its ability to help people, as I've said. So that being a priority over other stuff and basically other things sort of taking a back seat. So that's a very micro example of how I'm like using the concept of prioritization because I simply do not have time in the day to do all the things that I would like to do, which is a common theme for people. We don't have enough time in the day. If I could only have 10 or more hours a day, maybe I'd, whatever. So I'm very clearly focusing on the book launch and I'm focusing on speaking prep for a big gig that I have in January. I'm learning about separating my stories and collecting them. So I'm learning, like, that has been my work priority of late, which I'm glad about because it's a growth edge for me to learn really in a strong way to go into a book launch, a really strong way to go into how do I want to collect and tell my stories such that it's going to be of value to this particular audience. So again, that's a very detailed share, but that's how prioritization is showing up for me because I feel like I have a pretty solid habit built around self-care, going to the gym, doing my meditation. In no way am I perfect at these things, but for the most part, they're pretty solidly in play for me. You know what I mean? So then where am I applying prioritization? Where am I applying that so that I have a growth opportunity? It's currently in the realm of my work and personal relationships, but that's sort of always an ongoing for me.
Yeah. For me, there's this really key factors that play in, which are the emotional and the physical experience of life, right? So if I arrive into the day and I'm in my physical body in a sense where my body is informing me of things that are not well. Mm-hmm. If I'm in pain or I feel groggy, there's some relationship that my body is expressing to me about what my body needs, then it's going to shift my priority, from what I might want to be doing with my day or have planned to do with my day to what my body needs. Mm-hmm. Parallel to that is my emotional experience and arriving into the day with any number of emotions that could be popping up out of anywhere, or I could have carried with me from my entire life. They could be long-standing emotions that are like lingering, or they could be short-term things that are related to something that happened right before I went to bed the night before. So, and I'll be completely bluntly honest, I've struggled in a lot of my life with depression. Mm-hmm. And where it shows up is in that first waking moment of the day, where before I've even opened my eyes, while I'm just entering that, I'm here in my body again kind of phase, I have this no, I don't want to be here. Mm-hmm. Like this kind of crunching down feeling, like I want to go back to sleep, and this thing of my emotional being telling my physical being what it wants to happen, which is to run and hide, to not have to face these challenges of emotional growth, of growth opportunities, because right. They're hard, right? Growth is never comfortable. We've already done lots of talking about how growth is generally a painful experience, and it can be beautiful, but we've got to be willing to engage it. So this whole thing that you touched on of autopilot, a lot of the time we just go, morning, and go into this autopilot mode of, I'm now just going to go into my routine of going to the bathroom, of drinking a coffee, of brushing my teeth, of doing this whole thing, and not ever really like centering on where I am in my life and deciding. And obviously, Mel, compliments and kudos to you, because you've done some thinking and made some really hard decisions about how you want to prioritize your day related to your big picture goals in life. Yep. And that is really easy to just kind of pick easy goals. Yeah. Like, I'm going to work. Yeah. I'm filling that hole of responsibility, so I'm doing my thing. And I see that autopilot part being as much of a escape habit, a coping mechanism, rather than, the opposite for me is if I enter the day and go, okay, I'm going to do a morning meditation right now, and I'm going to accept my emotional experience of the day and get in touch with the feelings that I'm having and what's actually bugging me, and keep track of what's on my plate, then making a decision based on where my true opportunity to grow, move away from things that are not serving me and move towards things that are serving me, becomes a real present relationship, a real present reality in my life.
Yeah. And I think sometimes we don't even know, like we don't even know what the things we're going to try will do for us. Like when you were talking, I basically made me think about how I don't drink anymore, and how, I love that. How my decision to stop drinking was like, I've never felt like I've been an alcoholic. I've never, ever really had a struggle with alcohol. I sort of overused it a little bit when I was in my most intense period of heartbreak, but I recognized that pretty quickly, and I made myself step back from it, even though that was not when I stopped drinking altogether. Anyway, why I bring this up is that my decision to stop drinking was connected to the first love relationship that I was in after I got divorced. So it was this really brave, scary thing to be opening myself up to love again. And I could feel, as you were pointing to, the emotional charge and the anxiety and the fragility around that experience because of the high level of fear, understandably. And I wanted to prioritize my emotional strength. And I knew that when I drank alcohol, when I was hungover and whatever, it made me more emotionally fragile. So I decided very clearly, I am going to prioritize this new relationship and my emotional strength, which serves the new relationship and hopefully my growth in love relationships at large. At the time, my boyfriend at the time, he didn't drink, so it made it easier. It was a supportive piece of the puzzle that allowed me to choose that for myself. And it was totally worth it. It turned out to be totally worth it, but I had no idea what that was going to do for me. So that was one thing, was the love relationship piece of it. But then once I got into this experience of not drinking, I realized I liked it. I also like big, extreme things. So I was like, what's it going to look like to keep this going? I don't know. Who knows? But another prioritization of that particular piece of my life choosing was that once the relationship felt solid and was in sort of a good place and I was convicted in my commitment to not drink, I looked around and so many of the podcasts that I listened to that were entrepreneurs, super successful people in business and personal development or whatever, a lot of them, not all of them, but a lot of them also didn't drink. And so I was like, maybe this is a piece of me leveling up my ability to write, to create content, to grow my business. So I connected it to this other thing that I wanted to grow into. I did not know if that was going to be correct or not, but I was willing to try it. You know what I mean? And now I'm almost at my 5-year anniversary of not drinking, and I love it. I totally love it. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah.
But you can see, that's an example of me choosing both love relationships, emotional strength as a priority over this other thing that was habitual for me, was autopilot for me. And then this other thing, I'm prioritizing entrepreneurship, my creativity, my self-expression, all of that over this other thing that I think might be hindering that. So yeah, I feel like that's a good example.
So what I heard you touch on there was something that there's a slang term that gets used, and it's sheeple.
Yeah.
So it's when we just do what the crowd's doing, right? Like it's people being sheep is the condensed, Urban Dictionary definition, sheeple, people who are being sheep, which means they're just being led mindlessly with the flock, and not really making their own decision about where they're going or why they're going there or what they're doing, because the flock's going that way. I'm going with the flock because the flock is my safe place because of security and safety in numbers. And there's a reason why sheep stay together, because they're more vulnerable when they're alone to predators. And also this emotional vulnerability is something that we struggle with as humans, right? Yep. Where we feel more vulnerable when we strike out on our own. So this relationship of, I'm going to go ahead and break out of the normal societal behavior, this habitual use of alcohol to socially connect, to decompress, to relax. These are all tag words and they're not necessarily accurate. A lot of them are actually completely inaccurate. Mm-hmm. But there's all these societal reasons or versions of why alcohol is a socially accepted drug. And the reality is that it is kind of a mindless habituation of a behavior pattern that does negatively affect us physically, it's very damaging. Mentally, it's very damaging. It's one of the most damaging drugs in the sphere that's available to us. And it's readily available on almost every street corner in America.
Fascinating,
so
right?
It's crazy. Yeah. It was the one of the few that are considered socially acceptable. But what comes with that is this same, I want to get back to the emotional vulnerability piece, is that what's difficult about prioritizing a growth opportunity is there's a piece of fear and vulnerability and emotional risk related to it, where we have to generally leave the flock.
Correct.
To pursue whatever we've chosen to be our goal, or where we might have some passion in our life to say, man, I'd really like to, have a family, or I'd really like to build my own business, or I'd really like to travel the world, or whatever your, self-creative endeavor might be. That means breaking out of that typical behavior pattern that we all fall into, or we're kind of prescribed by society, which is go to school, get a job, get up, go to work, come home, watch TV, drink, go to bed, repeat, repeat, have kids, get old, retire, 55, you're done. Like the whole program, we're well familiar with it, but that black sheep who leaves the flock, is off on their own adventure. And gosh, I can sure relate to that experience.
Me too.
Yeah.
Me too.
So there's one other touch point in there that I want to just put very lovingly and very considerately put a hand around the shoulder of, which is something that you mentioned, because I think every single person listening to this podcast can relate to it as far as the priorities and growth opportunity relationship. And that was, you mentioned your first love endeavor after being married, right? So very vulnerable state when this happens to almost everybody.
Yeah.
We engage by connecting. We open our heart to what we believe we're doing is opening our heart and engaging and connecting with somebody. And with that comes this typically, and now this is not, of course, I'm not a doctor. I only play one on TV, nor am I a therapist, and nor is this any advice, but there's an emotional attachment that occurs when we say, okay, I'm going to share this part of myself with you that's very important to me, that holds all my vulnerability. And in some way, we create a set of expectations around that. We probably don't communicate them as fully as they need to be communicated or should be communicated. And then when those expectations aren't met, we're let down, or we feel brokenhearted as the description. And so what then occurs is this sensation of, okay, now I'm fearful of the idea of opening up my vulnerable space of connection because I'm afraid of the loss that might occur because of a failure to meet the expectations that I haven't communicated for myself. So,
exactly right. Yeah. Well, there's so much we could unpack around brokenheartedness and attachment and all of that. But yeah, for sure.
And what I just want to say is that the opportunity. So this every one of our episodes overlaps with the other in some ways, that the prioritization of taking a risk to re-engage something that previously we air quotes failed at, or was emotionally painful to us, or in some way we felt hurt or damaged or let down because we have some relationship to the experience having a negative emotional experience attached to it. Now we have this set of walls that we put up, and this is where I want to say, here's real growth opportunity, is when we say, okay, how do I get past these walls? How do I put myself out there enough to be vulnerable, to have the potential to grow, but at the same time do a better job of communicating the things that need to be communicated, to make sure that I'm not setting up false expectations or being let down because I failed to communicate them.
Yeah, absolutely. For sure. Gosh, brokenheartedness is such an amazing growth opportunity. Oh my God. I mean, it sounds very, I don't know what it sounds like, but it is so valuable for helping us see what we have not seen before, helping us uncover our blind spots. And that, if we talk about a growth opportunity and we talk about prioritization, if anybody who's listening right now is in the state of heartbreak, which is terrible and so painful and just agony for anybody who experiences it, it's totally normal. Recognize that this is your time to really genuinely practice self-love, practice self-reflection, and really ask yourself those questions. What did I bring to the table that got me into this scenario? You know what I mean? And I'm not suggesting blame or anything like that. I'm more suggesting the illumination of blind spots. And that can be really hard to do when we are in emotional pain, when we're like just totally broken, shattered, freaking out, desperate for any sort of sense of security or safety. I would advise people listening that are in that state. It's so hard to do, but like, yeah, try to breathe and try to take heart that you are in a really, really great period of your life. And if you can, on any level, prioritize this type of self-reflection, whether you do it with your therapist or with your friends or with online support exercises or whatever, it's a huge growth opportunity for sure.
It's a really interesting that we're talking about this. I had a experience just recently where somebody close to me, a relative, like physical close proximity, had an emotional tidal wave crash across them because of a love relationship and its proximity, its relativity to their everyday life, and how it completely changed their prioritization of what they needed to do with their day because of the emotional experience related to what was occurring. I mean, the emotional state of being became so heightened that the idea of like going to work is suddenly something that's not even on the table. Like, I'm not available to go and perform whatever duties I've committed to because my emotional state of being is in such a state of flux or in a heightened state of stimulation that I can't emotionally or physically be present to whatever responsibilities are there. And I can totally relate. I went through this recently where I had basically a nervous breakdown, you know, where I was so stressed out that I couldn't be available to many different types of responsibilities. And I had to prioritize my own time with myself and resetting my physical body's state of emotional being to be able to do any of that. So that prioritization needle of like pointing at the compass where it needs to be, it's so powerful. Yeah.
And that points to us having a low awareness of what theoretically we need to be prioritizing. That if we are not aware of that, like self-care or needing time or needing a deeper, more honest level of communication, a more skilled version of communication, whatever, right? We're talking about love relationship breakdowns, personal breakdowns, whatever. That speaks to, okay, I have a lack of awareness, or I have an awareness of what I, quote, should be prioritizing, but I ignore that and I choose to do something else instead, which then leads us to a bigger breakdown that forces the prioritization of those things that we need. I also like to compare love relationship heartbreak to having like the wound, the emotional wound of that, to a physical surgery or a physical wound. No one in their right fucking mind would expect someone who just had surgery to show up at work. You know what I mean? And the priorities do instantly and irrevocably change for that period of healing. So, I mean, that's in the realm of healing. But yeah, it's a great lens to look at prioritization and growth opportunities because it's so stark what we need. And then I think the question is, how do we apply that to the times when we're still functioning in life? How do we apply that awareness that we get in those times where we're forced down? You know what I mean? Or forced to slow down? How do we then use that awareness, that insight to make different choices in our day-to-day, in our sustainable, functional lives?
You know, I had a conversation just yesterday with some of my coworkers about how last year when I got hurt, I broke my back, I just showed up to work because my work is really just sitting in front of a computer.
Yep.
And engaging through either Zoom calls or working on documents or emails, you know, so it's basically laptop work most of the time. So it was something that as long as I had mental and energetic capacity to be able to do it, I could still do it. And it feels good to be productive. Like we all feel better at the end of the day if we did something of value with our day. And now what that value is can be anything on the spectrum.
Yeah.
If I need to Netflix and chill all day long today and binge watch some series with a big bucket of popcorn because that's what my emotional being needs to do right now, then that's where the priority compass points at.
Yeah.
You know, the other days it needs to be that I need to be highly productive and I need to get a lot of stuff done so that I can feel like I'm fulfilling, responsibilities, obligation, or at least feeling accomplished with the use of my time. And recently with struggling with mental health, with having been challenged in this area where like, okay, I can't actually show up in those capacities. I'd like to, but it's just not working. Then it's a completely different thing. That compass needle points at whatever I have to prioritize for myself. And this is what I was trying to touch on earlier with the physical body, the physical body in its pain condition of like whether things are working or not working. And then there's not really much difference between that and the emotional body and its needs. Like they all fall in the same thing of like, if our emotional needs are so high that they're taking over and now demanding to be heard. It's just like if my hand won't work because I have tendonitis because I've used the computer too long, I just can't do it anymore. I have to stop. And I think it's really important that we recognize hear these things within ourselves more. And I'm going to can do the same thing. I'm going to point back to meditation, to saying that this is such a hugely powerful tool to be able to listen to my physical body, listen for what does my body need, movement, stretching, exercise, nutrition, rest. What does my emotional body need? Connection, nurture, to be heard, compassion, empathy, connection, you know. And when I look at the emotional body's needs and the physical body's needs, and then really the rest has to come after that stuff. So I have to put those at the top of my list for prioritization. So this is what's got me back to like, where am I when I enter consciousness in the morning and I go, what am I going to do right now? I'm really happy that I've developed a practice of starting a meditation at the very beginning of my day, even if it's only 5 minutes before I do anything, to center myself and say, it's nice that I have all these goals and dreams, and many of them are going to take many, many, many years to bring them to fruition. And I have to get to work on them right away if I want them to happen. But what do I truly need right now? What is my body telling me? And when I say body, I'm referring to both the emotional being and the physical being, and listening to what those are and honoring them, really honoring them by, like, it's just the same way. If I sit here with you, Mel, and you say, hey, what I need is the next week off because I can't be available. I need to be with my family, or I need some time to rest, or I need to go be with friends, or I need to go exercise. I need these things. I have to be respectful and honor your needs. And this is how we need to treat ourselves. We need to honor our physical and our emotional body's needs so that we can truly be, because this is the foundation that moves us towards our achieving, like prioritizing the things that are really important.
Yeah. It's interesting too. I love all of that. Yes. Press pause or rewind it, peeps. Listen to it all again. It's legitimately so important. I think everything that you just said, Jay, about really reading ourselves, like that practice of cultivating self-awareness at that level, making that a practice, because it helps us then prioritize and go in the directions that we want. Certainly, our physical body and our emotional body doesn't necessarily indicate something in the realm of goals. So we'll have to have contemplated that. We'll have to have contemplated our core values and what we want. We set our goals in alignment, ideally, with those values, so that when we are going toward a goal, it's motivated by something deeper, that's motivated deeper inside ourselves and our emotional selves. So all of that is sort of a part of this conversation as well. We've talked about it before, so I don't need to go into that in too much depth. What I want to touch on next relative to prioritizing and how we can gain more awareness about what we do prioritize is that sometimes we're like, fuck, I'm on autopilot. How do I figure out my values? How do I figure out what to prioritize? I don't know. You know what I mean? Yes, it's listening to the physical body, emotional body, like we said, but a more, a more, again, micro example is, for example, I've talked about how I have a fucking lot on my plate. I've got a lot of work, a lot of opportunities, and it's a great problem, quote unquote, AKA not a problem, but only in that surplus, right? So on the edges, can we see what we actually do when pushed? So in surplus, I have 8 million emails. It's notable which emails get the response soonest. That is some place where I can go, oh, well, why am I responding to this person first? Why is this topic getting my attention first? And that can help us discern what our actual priorities are in that micro space. Similarly, when we're dealing with lack and we're in scarcity, and we're maybe triggered into scarcity fear, it's clear what then becomes the perceived priority at that point, whether it's we work more, and it's usually motivated by fear, which is not fun. So I'm not suggesting this is like great, but it's something that helps us cultivate that self-awareness and recognizing what the fear then prioritizes when we're in that space of lack. You know what I mean? We can go, oh, this is what the fear drives me and makes me choose as a priority. What would my consciousness, what would my values aligned self choose, even despite the current lack or the current scenario I'm facing?
Can you go into more detail on that for me?
The lack?
Yeah.
Well, meaning if we're in scarcity, if we're looking at Maslow's hierarchy, for example, for people that don't know what that is, at the very baseline of the hierarchy, we need the foundation. We need food, sleep, water, like we need that. And usually in our modern society, that's connected to making money. Because when we feel like, oh, we don't have enough money, we won't have enough money to pay for the roof over our head, we won't have enough money for food, we won't have the core needs met. So when we're down in that level of lack, the priorities immediately become, how can I feed myself? How can I shelter myself? Which is, when we're prioritizing that stuff, it is very difficult to prioritize, I'm going to work on this big goal that is a 10-year timeline.
You just made me think about something, and kind of like I got an understanding of I think I understand this. I mean, at least it's always ever going to be my perspective. But I think about the homeless crisis in America and how many people are actually on the streets and how expensive it is to have a roof over your head, right? It is really expensive to house yourself. And so this challenge of core needs, right? Food, water, house, sleep, gets the priority of housing gets pushed to the side because of some emotional needs, right? So again, my perspective, I'm not speaking for anybody except for my own point of view. I feel like what I'm seeing is emotional trauma is so high that the awareness of the need to prioritize these things gets rearranged so that we're then numbing our emotional experience or avoiding our emotional experience through drugs or alcohol or with mental health occurrences, issues arriving, that our own awareness of our need to get enough sleep, keep a roof over our heads, and feed and water ourselves gets rearranged. And that's where we end up with this. Yeah. It's more important to not feel than it is to worry about having a roof over my head.
Yeah. And some of the people that I know that do social impact work with the homeless, a big part of the sort of revolutionizing and being of service, and this, I am no expert at all. This is just very sort of satellite learning from these friends of mine, is they go in with absolutely that intent of caring for the emotional wound almost more than the scarcity wound. I mean, certainly food and versions of shelter and clothing, socks. Like socks are the most requested thing by homeless people. They request socks. That's why the company Bombas, I don't know if you know that company, but they donate a pair of socks for every pair of socks that's purchased. And that's like totally badass. But anyway, where I'm going with this is, and I do this because like I have the fear of being, I don't know, like I have a fear come up around walking by a homeless man. Am I in danger? So I definitely don't connect. And it's not great. I don't feel good about that. And it's something that I am looking at personally because of what you just said about that connection, that love, that emotional care, that acknowledging that human being exists is a huge healing agent.
It just has me thinking more and more that we need to keep the nurture of our own emotional state at the top of the list of priorities.
Yeah.
And when I say nurture, I don't mean just like, just give the sad me more candy to eat. I mean, like really taking the time to feel the things and being willing to go into the painful places within ourselves to unearth or unbury or open the doors to our closets of the things that are really eating at us so that we can truly heal or free these demons from ourselves or, the skeletons from our closets in order to then open up the potential, the priority, the potential then occurs, right? Because we're limited by them until we deal with them.
That has been my life experience. No question about it. Yeah. In that it is notable. I was certainly a high achiever before, getting into ceremonial healing and before doing therapy and before doing Landmark and before doing all the personal development that I did. I was always a high achiever, but it was in that very unconscious lane, and which is why it led to the breakdowns and the, blow ups and mushroom clouds of my life, which is normal. Again, is normal. Now that I have done rigorous healing, and I'm committed, obviously, for life to be in rigorous healing, it's so clear to me, Jay, how I am able to communicate like we were talking about in the way that would actually facilitate a real and authentic connection and clearing of space when needed, navigating of conflict in a healthy way, like building of those skills. I now had access to that to be able to even grow those skills. Fuck yeah. I can now prioritize, you know what I mean? Writing my book and sharing it with the world, finishing a project that huge, doing this podcast, you know what I mean? Doing all of these things that they are not down at the baseline of foundational goals. They are very clearly up in the realm of contribution, being of service. Where am I feeling enlightened and fulfilled? It's much further up the pyramid because the healing has allowed me to be able to do that, to prioritize that foundational stuff so that it's safe and secure so that I can play in these higher levels.
Sorry, I had a thought and I just lost it as you were speaking there because you had so many valuable points. And I was just hanging on every word.
If it's good, it'll come back. That's what I always say about the ideas that go from my brain. I'm like, oh, it's good, it'll come back.
Yeah. This, I mean, you really had me whirling there. My recent experience in this life, which is cumulative for all of us, has been that I began writing a book a number of years ago about my own life, a memoir. And as I started to structure it and lay out all the pieces and figure out what I wanted it to be, I started seeing the parts of my own life that I was less than happy with. And I started unearthing the pieces that I hadn't dug into, that I had buried away, or I had closed a door on. I had just thrown it in a box, closed the lid, forget about it, you know? And a lot of those, I hadn't dealt with them because I had excellent coping mechanisms, right? And I have these wonderful coping mechanisms that allow me to feel great on a daily basis, where I'm literally full of life and I'm fantastic and I'm wonderful. Look at me, you know, look at how fantastic I am.
Look at how fantastic I am.
Look at how fantastic I am, having a great time. My life is like living the dream.
Yes.
You know, and inside there's still a hole.
Right.
Where I didn't deal with something and I can't even talk about it.
I know.
Or I couldn't even bring it to the table. And I started the book a number of years ago. And as I go through each chapter, I go, oh, can I even write on this? I haven't even fixed this or done it, or, you know, it's still buried and it's been dragging out the authoring of this memoir because I'm not willing to just write how I didn't do it.
Yeah.
You know, and to me, this has been more valuable, this prioritization of deal with the emotional baggage over just telling the story and sugarcoating it, because I could tell you a really good story and it would be full of all kinds of beautiful, you know, entertaining, colorful experiences and travels and stories. And it would skip over the real important stuff, which is underneath. Yeah. So yeah, I just wanted to reflect on that because that's my journey.
Well, and I acknowledge that it's a legitimate, normal thing for people who are authoring memoirs, who are telling any part of their life story that matters to them. I thought about publishing How to Fly 5 years into my column, and it was 100%. I wasn't even close to it wasn't even close to being a whole story arc. Like I hadn't even had a breakdown. It was just like so superficial. Like it wasn't done, you know, and not to say that it's done in its form because I'm no longer writing for Blue Skies Mag. It's the complete anthology, but it also is inclusive of enough of my life where the hero's journey is actually there, and the end of it, and this is no spoiler. I mean, anyone who's been following me or listening on the show knows this, but the end is really that the richest writing of my life, you know what I mean, where it's the depth is there, and it's also this exciting jumping off point to the future of my writing, because I identify and feel called to be a writer. Like that's part of my contribution in this life, I feel. And so I'm excited that my writing and that version of my expression is taking on a new form and continuing toward the depth that I got to finishing my piece. Now, this particular piece. So I just want to acknowledge that, because that's great that you are allowing it the space and are doing more inside of your story to express it and to share what you want to share versus rushing an outcome. You know what I mean? So it's like you're prioritizing that process, it sounds like, versus the, you know, forcing of creating just something because you're Jay fucking Moledzki and that'd be cool to have a book.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And you know what's the beautiful irony is the title of the book is My Unfinished Masterpiece.
There you go. Yeah.
And it's, you know, you're talking about your story about how it's like, it's not done yet. And the truth of the story is it's not done yet. It's never going to be done, but it needs to be a version of itself that's perfectly perfect in its incomplete state.
Yeah.
You know?
For
so
sure.
That's the relationship there, which is, I mean, as far as a practice for ourselves, for like a self-honoring practice of like, I need to be content with myself as a perfectly imperfect version of me. And that imperfection is perfect. And the fact that I'm still in a growth state and that things are still changing is perfect. Mm-hmm. And that I still have all this opportunity ahead of me is perfect. There's nothing wrong with anything. Everything is actually right where it needs to be. And this is, I mean, I've spent many years trying to get to a point where I could understand a Ram Dass type of statement of like perfect. Mm. And you're like, what do you mean perfect? What about this? What about that? This is wrong. And that's wrong. What about these? You know, what about this? And what about that? And I could make lists and lists of things that I can point fingers at, when really it's just like looking back inward and getting that reflection on ourselves.
Yeah. Part of my growth process around that type of rooting of ideas is, and again, I go back to the micro, because the macro concepts are only useful if we can apply them to our actual daily existences. So you've talked about meditation and this and that. One of the things that I do is I listen to a fucking lot of podcasts and a lot of audiobooks. And I do that because it reinforces, you know, like, for example, back in the day when I did my life coaching school, we heard this thing, there are no mistakes. And I remember having never heard that and being like, okay, this is cool, but, you know, not necessarily feeling comfortable with that idea, but sort of open to being there at this life coaching school thing. But anyway, why I bring that up is that from my life coaching school, I met someone who was talking about the friendly universe and how the universe has our back, how the universe is conspiring for us, how it's all for us. And that's been a core tenet of my whole fucking existence. But it's not just because the life coach dude said there are no mistakes, and it's not because my friend said the universe is friendly and it's everything that happens is for us. It's because constantly through loads of different channels that I choose to listen to this book because I know it's going to support me and my psyche and my emotional health and my growth in the ways that I want. I'm prioritizing what I choose to consume, and it consistently supports these ideas that I want to take root in me. And so that has been huge in terms of a practice and a consistent thing that I choose to do that supports me in my emotional self and my emotional and just literal growth in all the lanes that I care about.
I am 100% on board with everything you just had to say. The continuing to reinforce and remind ourselves, like it's so easy to forget the most important things we've ever learned.
Yep.
You know, I can look back at the greatest epiphanies I've had in my entire life and remember in an instant, I can forget all the key points and I can be totally wrapped up in some momentary experience that I'm having and completely lose my relationship to the infinite and how I understand these things already and I know these things, and can every single day reinforcement of those through structure and practice and prioritizing certain things in our lives are going to establish that. So I'll make a clear share. I'm wearing a ring on my finger. I think I might have mentioned this before.
Yeah.
There's a ring on my finger from an artist that the insignia on it reminds me of some of the elements of the infinite universe that I know and remember. And I wear this other one with a skull on here because it reminds me of my mortality and that this is all going to end and that I don't need to get too attached to anything because it's not permanent. Nothing's permanent. This is all just a, dust in the wind kind of thing. So I've tattooed on my chest sacred geometry so that every time I look in the mirror, I remember that I am the infinite universe and that the infinite universe is me and that I cannot escape that and I can't forget it because it's right there to remind me every single day.
Yeah.
And I see it with my own eyes. And that's me prioritizing my relationship to my higher self in a way where I put my money where my mouth is and I put it on my skin so that I have to see it every day and I can't erase it. It doesn't go away. And it's me going, you're not going to forget this because this is what you're all about. And this is what drives you to grow and to experience life in a way where I don't need to be fearless. I don't need to be fearful and I can be fearless because I remember that this is all just temporary and in the end, it's all going away and I have nothing to lose except for fear. If I lose my fear, I gain everything else. I gain all the love and all the growth.
Yeah.
So all those reminders in place, like, oh, how do you prioritize spending that much money on tattoo work? I'm like, well, there's a reason.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, and you speak to something I think universally important is that what we prioritize consistently over time becomes what we grow into. It becomes our growth. So like doing something once or twice is not a growth opportunity. Things that we prioritize consistently over time and engage in consistently over time and do consistently over time, AKA our priorities in action, that becomes what we grow, how we grow.
Diet is such a great example of that. Just how we choose to nurture our physical body with what we put in it.
Yep.
I'm really happy to say that lately my diet's been very simple and very nourishing. And its result has been that I look in the mirror and I'm like, wow, I'm looking really good. And I'm not even working that hard on it, and that's just relative to my own set of goals. I'm not being like egotistically like I look good. I'm like, wow, I had a goal for myself of where I want my body weight to be. And there's a whole bunch of things that sustain that, like my relationship of body mass to body fat. And there's a health goal in here for me to be able to live a life that I want to live. So my prioritization choices of I'm going to choose to eat a diet that falls within this scope and stay within it as much as possible is in a relationship to wanting to live a full life, of wanting to be happy and healthy and able to do the things that I love to do and to be with the people that I enjoy to be with and have the life experiences that are enabled by having a physical body that's healthy enough to do those things.
Yeah.
So it's this whole great big connective piece. I'm not just going, oh, I'm going to eat salads all the time so I can be sexy because I have an ego. No, I want to be able to climb a mountain because I want to stand on top of it with one of my best friends and have a high five and a hug and look at the beauty of the world around us.
Yeah.
And I can't do that if I'm not physically healthy enough to do it. So it's this great big connective prioritization choice, and I have to choose the lifestyle, be in a place, find work that allows me to do the things that I want to do so I can actually sustain that level of health, have the time available to do that, and then make it to the top of the mountain and make getting out of the office and going to do that more important than sitting in front of my computer.
I feel that. I am not going to be the future Betty White being on SNL when I'm 95 years old if I'm not taking care of my body and having fun making stupid idiot movies. Like, I'm serious. That's part of my plans for Thanksgiving. My friends and I are going to make our next spoof movie, and it's like joy in my heart just knowing it's going to happen. And that's a priority of mine because I believe in love and hilarity, all the things. So yeah, I love it. I'm totally into it.
We're doing the same with our Thanksgiving. We're going to go. So we're recording this just days before Thanksgiving. Day before Thanksgiving.
Yes.
Yeah. And we're going for a group hike before we're going to settle into the house and spend some time connecting. We're going to go outside and have a tea party up on top of a mountain.
Fun.
So get everybody out for some good exercise together and some outdoor time in the sun and the nature and enjoying being in this beautiful place that we have, which is called Earth. And once we've had a good amount of exercise, we'll then go and we'll cook and we'll nourish and we'll connect and rest.
If people want to watch the nonsense that I've been doing recently, I've been doing a lot more Instagram stories, and I have been doing some hip hop dancing with Shanti.
Hells yeah.
And the core message with that is that looking cool is overrated. Because in no way do I look cool doing my hip hop dances, but fuck it. I like it. It's fun. It's serving my health and fitness. And that's it. That's all I have.
Well, this has been an excellent, inspiring episode for me. I feel inspired to go and to get outside and pursue and prioritize and actually feel a good relationship to my emotional being too right now. I'm like, oh yeah, needy me needs love and I need to pay attention to that, and physical need needs action and nurture and all that, and the prioritization is the clarification, like the clarity related to my own needs to prioritize is coming into place and more every day. So I'm really grateful for this share.
Speaking of great gratitude, yes. Jay, I love you. I am grateful for you. Everybody listening, I love you. I am grateful for you. Thank you so much for being here, for being with us. We say it every time, but we really mean it. There is no chance in hell we would be doing this show if it weren't motivated by the prioritizing of the core values of the show. So we're just so thankful that you're here and with us, and always hope that you get value. Anytime you want to reach out to us, drop us a line, please do. We welcome feedback. We welcome questions. We welcome any sort of thing that you'd like to share. As Jay said in the beginning, trustthejourney.today is our website. It's our Instagram. It's all the things. Go there if you want anything. For the audio and video editing, KimberlyJoyVoice@gmail.com. For me, MelanieCurtis.com. For Jay, Instagram @Jason_Moledzki. And what else, my friend?
You could also find me on Instagram, or her on Instagram @Queen Jasmine Official.
Yes.
With underscores into that if you want to follow my forays into another version of self-expression.
Hells to the yeah. Well, family, we love you so much. Thanks again. And yeah, we love you.
I love you.